study is one component of the complex and multifaceted project on the Ottoman archives of Simona Petra Monastery, which is being realized in collaboration with an international and multidisciplinary team since October 2023. I would therefore like to take a moment to acknowledge our supporters and patrons, as well as our collaborators. Imagine a pan-Orthodox promontory in northeastern Greece, which has preserved Byzantine religious traditions since the first human settlement in the 8th century. Imagine an exclusively male monastic enclave of 33,042 hectares on which women have been forbidden to venture for centuries. Imagine a peninsula that has facilitated the conservation of species of flora and fauna found nowhere else in the Mediterranean, thanks to its sustainable and natural agricultural methods. This is the holy mountain of Athos. So I begin with just a short historical and legal context for those of you who are not particularly familiar with Athos. So it is known synonymously as the Garden of the Mother of God and was founded on the third promontory of the Chalkidiki Peninsula in northeastern Greece. The self-governing republic has been designated a World Heritage Site, a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1988. As such, Mount Athos also represents a place of outstanding historic, cultural, artistic, and natural value. The first historically attested monastic presence on Athos began in the early 9th century, and by the mid-10th century, it had become one of the most renowned monastic centers in the Byzantine Empire. At its height in the first millennium, there were 46 monasteries housing monks from the traditional Orthodox heartlands. Today, 20 pan-Orthodox monasteries with their affiliated monastic villages, skirts, monk cells, Kelian, and dependencies, metochia, represent the spiritual and intellectual heart of Orthodoxy. So the Ottoman Sultan Murad II's conquest of Thessaloniki in 1423 replaced approximately 5 centuries of Byzantine Christian rule with Ottoman Muslim dominion. Athos came under the Hellenic Republic's sovereignty with the Treaty of Seville in 1920, which was ratified by the Treaty of Lausanne in 1923. Throughout its long history, Athos's fortunes were reflected in numerous dramatic events, including Sultan Selim's confiscation affair, the foundation of the Athenite Academy, occupation by Ottoman Turkish garrisons from 1821 to 1830, as well as the celebration of the 1000th anniversary of the monastic Genobitic life on Athos in 1963. As regards its legal status, since Byzantine times and throughout its suzerainty, the Holy Mountain has remained under the spiritual jurisdiction of the Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople. Today, it remains under the jurisdiction of His Holiness Bartholomew I, Patriarchate, however, located in Turkey. So, his title, ecumenical, is not recognized either for the Ecumenical Patriarchate or the Patriarch, and it is not allowed to be used for any religious activities, despite having been used since the 6th century, and despite its worldwide recognition in our contemporary times. So moving on to the archival sources, I'll just give it a brief overview about Simona Petra Monastery's archive. And this is the Ottoman archive I'm speaking about. So the majestic mid-13th century monastery of Simona Petra is one of the oldest and most architecturally impressive of the 20 Athenite monasteries to have survived until today. The 7-story bold monastic compound was built upon one huge and precipitous rock, situated at an elevation of 217 meters above the sea, on the southern coast of the Holy Mountain between the port of Daphne and Gregora Monastery. The monastery was partly named after its eponymous founder, Saint Simeon Miprolites, who was a hermit dwelling in a cave nearby when he received divine instruction to build the monastery. Simona Petra's material prosperity was matched historically by its intellectual and archival wealth, and today the archives contain a large collection of documents in Greek, Church Slavonic, Romanian, and Ottoman Turkish, and the library is well stocked with modern books and periodicals about the humanities. So the Ottoman archive comprises of a significant collection of approximately 680 documents, dating from the mid-16th to the early 20th centuries. Although the monastery's once extensive archive was reduced because of the numerous conflagrations which took place in 1580, 1622, and 1891, as a result of which there was a significant loss of documents. However, the remaining Ottoman archive is nonetheless of great historical and cultural value. So it's part of the cataloguing project, which we have almost finished. Our aim is to catalogue with full transliteration translation into both English and Greek the entire Ottoman archive of Simona Petra Monastery. And I'm working in collaboration with an international team and interdisciplinary team. And we expect that the first volume from the 16th century will be published later on this year. So within this presentation, I'm only going to make reference to the archival collection of the 16th century. And I think it's also important to understand the limits. So as with any written text, the purpose, provenance, and intentions of the people involved in its writing are what conditions the document. It's necessary, therefore, to read them within the context in which they were issued and to recognize the thematic limitations, periodic limitations, and discontinuities from the collection of 50 extant documents, and to also recognize that there are issues in terms of the spellings of people and place names and the language of the actual documents being legal in nature. They are very formulaic and repetitive. So I move on to the main subject of this seminar today, and that's looking at multi-religious relations between the Athonite monks and the Muslim and Jewish communities in the Balkans, and more specifically within Macedonia. So the Athonite Ottoman archival collection reflects that there were 3 levels of contact between the Athonite monks and the Ottoman judicial bureaucratic administration. Central, such as an imperial edict, a firman issued for the repair of monastic properties. Provincial, a judicial document, a hujjat, for example, issued by the Sharia court of Salonika. And local level, such as a travel permission, tezkere, issued for a monk on the Athonite Peninsula by the superintendent or governor, who resided with a small contingent at the Athonite capital of Karias. What is of interest in this study is to examine the contact between the Athonite monks and the ordinary subjects within the framework of Christian-Muslim encounters and Christian-Jewish encounters. At the common level, the Ottoman document reveal the Ottoman documents in general, not just this particular document, reveal property transfers and contestations as being the most frequent reason for contact. The relationships were generally harmonious and matters were resolved through the Sharia courts. However, I should not omit saying that rarer instances of violence do appear in documents written in the 17th century. So today I'm going to look at a case study for Muslim-Christian relations. And this is a hujjat, a court document, a judicial document dating from 1998, that's 1590. And as you can see, it's in a very poor state of preservation. There are some Greek notes on the rector, which are written subsequently by the monks, and that translates as judicial document for Alina's arable fields in the village of Ios Nikolaos. So the document is about two Muslim sisters, Fahri and Aini, who conducted a property transaction with the Athenite monks. And the sisters are described as the daughters of Ali, and they're among the inhabitants of Megali Panaya village, situated in central Halkidiki. They have as their legal representatives Ali Bey, son of Mustafa, and the police officer Hussein, son of Abdullah, and case witnesses Yusuf, son of Abdullah, Dervish, son of Dervish, Hassan Bali, and Mustafa, son of Abdi. So the Christians were notable Orthodox monks and elders, among whom was a priest monk, a hero monk known as by the name of Gabriel from Simonopetra Monastery. And what's so interesting about this case study is not only does it represent transactional relationship between the Athenite monks and Muslims residents of Chalkidiki, but it was a transaction done on behalf of two women. And so these sisters sold to the monks for a total of 25,000 akças, the usufruct of arable fields, watermill plots, and houses. And they collected the said amount from the monks without any discrepancies. And they agreed that the court should give the monks a judicial transcript for the sale. So the Simonopetrites monks validated with their physical presence and orally the declaration made by the two sisters' representatives. And after the judicial judgment, these words were written down within this document and placed into the hands of the purchaser so that the legal validation of the property would be remembered when needed. And I'm not going to go through all of the individuals within the documents, but some of the most important were those of the monks, such as Eugenios, and he was an abbot of Simonopetra Monastery who played a very significant part in the rebuilding of the monastery after the Faria of 1580. And he actually went to Wallachia, where he raised funds for the reparation of the monastery. And one of the important points that I must emphasize here is we only obtain partial information from the Ottoman documents, so we have to go to other sources, primarily the Greek and Romanian, Slavic language sources that are preserved within Simonopetra, some of which have already been published. As you can see the source on this slide, and others that are in the process of being digitized and published. So while we can obtain certain details from a general prosopographical picture of the people mentioned within these documents, it's necessary to access a variety of different sources in different languages. And that's why the digitization of the Athenite archives is so essential. So, this is a quote from the actual document. And in terms of evaluation, I'd like to evaluate it within the understanding, within the framework of Avaton, and the understanding that in spite of the ban on anything female, women or female animals entering onto the Athenite Peninsula, which were laid down in the Typica, the general ordinances, of the Byzantine emperors, women nonetheless played a significant role in their relations with the Athenite monasteries. So within the Ottoman documents in general, you see them mentioned by their first name or through their affiliation as mothers, daughters, sisters, cousins, nieces, and wives. as patronesses, donors, witnesses, inheritors, debtors, petitioners, and claimants. It's also interesting to note that women facilitated the extension of the Athenite boundaries and the extension of networks through these property transactions, through donations. And the case of the two sisters, the two Muslim sisters, is one very good one because their properties were located outside of the Athenite Peninsula and within Chalkidiki. And they entered into a relationship with the Simona Petra Monastery as a result of a property transaction. So women were physically restricted from entering the Athenite domains. However, there was still a lot of contact between monasteries and women outside of that environment. So I move on briefly, look at the relationship between the Athenite monks and the Jewish community primarily of Salonika, known today as Thessaloniki. And because of the scarcity of primary sources or their inaccessibility, historians have not exclusively studied the relationship between the Athenite monks and the Jews of Macedonia during both the Byzantine and Ottoman eras. With what frequency do the Jews of Macedonia appear in the largely unstudied Ottoman archive collection preserved on Athos? So this is a question that Alexander Fotic's comprehensive study about Hilandara Monastery and the Jews in the 16th and 17th century have demonstrated that they were fairly represented within the documents, and that the contact between the monks and the Jews was mutually beneficial because the monks favored Jews as business partners due to their financial experience and international connections. Jews are mentioned either as actors with direct or indirect relations with the monasteries. The former is usually in the capacity as moneylenders, translators, interpreters, or witnesses. Athenite Jewish relations are well documented in Athenite sources because of the debts of the monks to the Jews of Salonika in the late 16th century and 17th century onwards. This is especially after Sultan Selim's confiscation and resale of monastic properties in the Balkans, better known as the confiscation crisis of 1568, as evidenced by Fokion Kotzegeorgis's meticulous study of Ottoman archival documents from Ios Paulos Monastery. So in terms of a case study, I'd like to present the following document, which is correspondence between officials of the judiciary and dated to 1990, that's 1582. And you have notes written on the Greek notes written on the rectum at the top of the document. And essentially it says that it's the Hujjat of Abdurrahim Effendi for the land and that it is useless. And what the monks mean by the word useless is the irrelevance of the document for the purposes sought by the monks, and that was namely the safeguarding of their properties. So on the 9th day of the month of Safar 1990, 4 Jews approached the court in Salonika to file a claim against the Athenite monks of Simona Petra Monastery. The judge who presided over the case was Abdurrahim bin Amr, under whose area of jurisdiction was both Salonika and Karaferia. The claimants' names are registered as the Jews called Yosef Shamuel, David Garson, Salomon Avraham, and Yehuda son of Joseph Asael from the community of Sephardic Jews of Salonika. They testified the following. We and our witnesses testify that the representatives of Simona Petra Monastery in the Holy Mountain located within your jurisdiction, Hieromognifon and monks called Maximos, Joseph, Lam, and Dositheos must pay us their debt of 33,000 silver coins, actually, for the price of the purchase of their 24 water buffaloes and their winter pasture called Megaloporter in the locality of Longos. In the same text, the judge Abdurrahim bin Amr addresses in a correspondence to the Mudarris Hassan Chalabi, son of Murad, who was the judge of the town of Sidra. He addresses this document to him, and in the text he describes the claimant's testimony followed by an oath in which they confirmed that they had not received the payment of the debt in full. The court pronounced the witnesses to be acceptable, and on this basis, correspondence was dispatched, reiteration by Judge Abdurrahim, quote, "May justice be delivered to those who are deserving of it, and may they obtain a great reward by the grace of the exalted," unquote. So the principal location, the toponym mentioned within this document, is Salonika, known today as Thessaloniki. That is the place where the Jewish community took the monks to court. And Salonika was known by the appellations Salonico la Judea, Jewish Salonika, or in Judeo-Spanish, and Shabbatopolis, the city of the Sabbath in Greek, and subsequently as Mother of Israel and Jerusalem of the Balkans, by the city's Ottoman Jewish intellectuals. And the presence of Romanian Jews was noted in Salonika from the first centuries of the Byzantine era. And by the time of the date of this document, the 16th century, the Jews had become the demographic majority and represented the second largest center of Jews in the Ottoman Empire. And the sultans welcomed the settlement because they were renowned for their commercial expertise, finance, and crafts, especially textiles and printing. And so you had the presence of Romanian, Ashkenazi, and Sephardic Jews. But despite of these migrations, Salonika remained a cosmopolitan center with a multi-religious and multi-ethnic resident community. So I don't know, I think I'm running out of time. So
no, you're fine. You can go 15 minutes.
Oh, okay. So so I just want to mention some observations about the prosopography. So the paleographical and toponymic details have to be highlighted for a clearer understanding of the actors involved. And the challenge of correctly identifying people within Ottoman documents is attributed to the fact that they are only mentioned by their first name and the name of their father, as in the case of the Jewish community, as you can see in front of you. And it's therefore necessary to rely on other sources. So in the interest of time, I'll only mention Hieromonk Nifon, the principal defendant. And if we look at another archival document dated from 989, that's 1581, he appears as the head of the monks of Simonopetra, and in which the monastery is managing its debts in exchange for proceeds of a metochia. So the fact that known in Ottoman Turkish as Papa Niko appears as the head of the monks in the second Ottoman archival document reinforces the identification with Nifon, who was a prominent priest monk. So in terms of evaluation, the document confirms the Jewish community as historical actors in their own right. And although the Athenite and Jewish communities had their own legal autonomy headed by the Holy Community for the former and the Jewish court for the latter, they both sought recourse to the Muslim court or the Sharia court. And in this case, it was because of its impartiality and also because the verdict derived authority from the state, and as such, it could be enforced. That explains that despite all the prohibitions by bishops and rabbis, Orthodox subjects of the Sultan went to the court, the Sharia court. Furthermore, non-Muslims would often turn to the court because the Qadi held a place of legal and administrative significance. The Jewish actors of the document bring their case to the court in their capacity as moneylenders, and the Jews of Salonika were well known as moneylenders, as attested by Ottoman archival collections of Athos. So on the role in which the Jews of Salonika and Sidra Kapsa appear prominently are that of moneylenders because the monks sought loans for their impoverished monasteries or pawned their movable valuables and estates as security. Parallels can be drawn between the Jewish relationship with the Athonite monasteries and those of the Christian monasteries of Jerusalem. Chaim Gerber suggested that lending money to monasteries, which were in constant need of loans, was a reliable source of income for many Jews. And in the case of the monks of Simona Petra, they turned to professional moneylenders, since they sought recourse through the courts because the legal status as non-Muslims did not affect their standing in court. So this study, in conclusion, this study presents further evidence of the religious plurality in Ottoman Macedonia and the Mediterranean port city of Salonika. The following conclusory observations can be made. First, that there were direct financial relations between the Christian Orthodox monks of the Athonite Peninsula and the Jews and Muslims in Macedonia. Second, the Sharia court was a mediator for disputes between the monks and Jews because it was religiously impartial and had the authority to implement the verdicts. And thirdly, the doctrinally based intolerances were not reflected either in the language of the Ottoman documents in this study, nor with the monks' relations with the Muslims and Jews. It's a careful reading and editing of these historical documents from subsequent centuries is necessary in order to complete the picture. And I would like to say, also in lieu of a conclusion, that this is, as previously mentioned, part of a much more comprehensive study on the Ottoman archival collection of Simona Petra Monastery, both in terms of cataloguing with full translation of the entire archive, as well as academic publications and outreach and public engagement in the form of exhibitions and workshops and presentations. And since this project began in 2023, much of this has already taken place as a result of international and interdisciplinary collaboration. And I would say that Simona Petra Monastery's Ottoman archive and those of the entire Athonite Peninsula are an extremely valuable collection of sources, spanning centuries and pertaining to a vast region. And most of them have not been digitized or even studied. So I think this study and the more comprehensive project helps to facilitate new insights into the history, society, and institutions of the Ottoman Balkans, and also the multicultural and multi-religious character of the topic allows for an understanding of the entangled histories of the diverse populations within the Ottoman Empire, as well as offering new data on prosopographical data especially, regarding Muslim, Christian, and Jewish-Christian relations by revealing the intricacies of the relationships not just between the Ottoman state and the monks, but among the resident or the subject community within these lands. Thank you very much for your attention.